Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and dopamine.
Hello, and welcome to week 6 of Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Brie Fagan.
I'm Jess Wozniak.
And we're back again to give you more dopamine.
Week 6.
6 whole weeks.
This is a month and a half. This is the longest relationship I've ever had. That's absolutely a lie.
That's so much of that is a lie. Everything
about what I said is a lie.
I mean, it might be the most consistent side project I've kept up with ever in my life.
Yay! We did it.
We were actually just talking about how, with my ADHD brain, the minute I commit to something, my brain hates it. So even trying to get here today to record this episode, which I know I'm going to adore and I know is going to be a good time, I had to literally convince my brain that it was still a good time, because my brain woke up going, nope, we have to do that today, so I don't want to do it. And obviously I fought through that, and I'm here and having a great time because my brain is wrong. But that executive function, man, just doesn't want to be there.
I hate it. This podcast.
The end.
We're done.
We only made it 6 weeks.
I think we were gonna have a competition of some sort from last week, based on last week, but I can't seem to recall what it was. Do you?
Oh, not a competition, but we need suggestions of unpopular opinions.
Yes.
We specifically were thinking of unpopular Harry Potter opinions that we would like to argue our cases for, but we want to hear other people's unpopular opinions.
Yeah.
Probably, if you have some nerd-based book ones, we'd love to hear those, but we'd love to hear, pretty much anything anyway.
The only thing we aren't gonna tolerate is that you don't like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that is not an opinion
Unpopular
we're willing
opinion.
to hear.
Those movies suck. No, you suck.
You're wrong.
I'm sorry. I get
So
a
maybe
little heated.
the Hobbit gets a little long.
The movies, yeah, they're yeah.
Made me sad.
They brought PJ in too late on those. He couldn't save them. He tried his best.
But when you take the shortest book and make it into 3 whole movies,
money,
there are going to be issues.
Yeah. But that is pretty much the only thing. I mean, there's a lot of hatred that we won't tolerate.
Yeah.
But
don't send us your unpopular opinions about people or groups
politics.
of people that you don't care about,
Yeah.
or politics, because we're not about that life.
But you got nerd ones. We want to hear them.
Yes.
Please. You can email us at dungeonsdragons. No, that's a complete lie. You will not get a hold of us if you email Dungeons Dragons.
I was like, did she change our email address?
Surprise! It's just
You just really wanted to go back to those dragons.
dragons. It's just Jessica Rocks at gmail.com. You can email us at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com. No space, no and. Just dungeonsdopamine at yahoo.com. Or you can find us on Facebook. Hopefully you're already following us on Facebook.
And if you're not, you better go fix that right now.
For real. For real. You've missed so much if you're not. You've missed the poll to name the spider and snake plants.
And that's important.
That's huge. What have you done?
What if you do not get to give us your opinion on what we should name the spider and snake plants? What are you even doing with your life?
What are you doing? These are going to be an integral part of our lives.
Forever.
Forever. For as long as I can keep them alive.
As long as I can help her keep them alive. So forever.
It's a good thing you'll be here once a week-ish.
Yes. It'll be fine.
So
plus, it's a snake plant. You would have to try really hard to kill it.
That's fair. That's fair. So yeah, please, unpopular opinions. Maybe your unpopular opinion is it's really easy to kill a snake plant. We want to hear it, and we want to hear why.
Yep. You have to argue your case.
Please. Yeah.
Maybe. Well, I guess you don't have to.
You could just...
Maybe I'll argue your case.
Yeah. Or it could be a very brief few sentences. But we want to know, what is your unpopular opinion?
Should we share one of our unpopular opinions?
We
just
should.
to get it started?
Yeah. Give an example. What do you think? Where should we start?
I think we should start with Snape.
Snape, unpopular opinion, did not deserve forgiveness.
And did not deserve a redemption arc.
At all. He's such a jerk. He's so cruel to these children.
That have nothing to do with who bullied him or did not love him.
Yeah.
In his teenage years.
Yes.
He held a grudge against a literal child because the child's dead father was mean to Snape in high school.
Yes. And this kid grew up without parents, being mentally abused. Yes. And sometimes physically abused by his family. And this bully of a little kid that they had living with them, he never even had his own, clothing. Mm-hmm. It was all hand-me-downs.
And Snape would have known all of that.
Yes.
Because they were keeping track of Harry this whole time.
And it was his fault that Lily died.
Yeah.
So, well, okay, partially his fault. But anyway, he didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve to have one of Harry's kids named after him.
That's probably the worst part of the whole ending. All of those people he could have named his children after, and he picked Snape.
Yeah.
A man who literally bullied him when he was 11 years old.
And he was so horrible to Neville.
Yes, and Hermione.
Yes.
If Connor came home from school and told me that a teacher said to him what Snape says to those children, I would lose my mind.
Yes. Granted, I don't think Hogwarts is a very good school to, pretty much everything they do wouldn't take me off. The stairs move and your kid can get lost.
Yeah.
No.
The security seems to be a problem at Hogwarts. You're right. I'm not sure I would trust Hogwarts in general. If that letter shows up for Connor's 11th birthday, I'm really going to have to think about it.
Connor's not allowed to join the Triwizard Tournament. I don't care about the glory.
No. But what if somebody else puts his name in the Goblet of Fire?
Connor, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?
Yep.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there, as long as it doesn't move like stairs at Hogwarts.
Right. Get us lost or knock us off a 2-story drop?
At least. Yeah. So anyways, please, unpopular opinions. We want to hear them. We want to hear why. We clearly feel very fiery about our unpopular opinions.
Really good way to get our blood boiling.
Absolutely.
Just to mention Snape.
Jogged around the house, and I believe you have a cliffhanger for us.
I do. I'm going to finish up some discussion on feral landscaping or rewilding or ungardening. So from last week, I talked about why you might want to get into a lazier style of landscaping or rewilding, and a lot of it had to do with saving water or having a garden instead of lush green grass. And the different I think I only started with one real bit of advice on how to start that, and that was to be very careful about what plants you choose for your rewilding, because you don't want to choose something that could harm your family or your pets if you can't trust them to not eat them. And you also don't want to introduce or invite even more invasive species into yard that you then have to maintain more, because otherwise they'll choke out all of your native plants and your good stuff that you've put effort
And
into.
they might not be beneficial for the pollinators, or
Right. They might be bad for the ecosystem in this area. So I found quite a few websites, but one of my favorite ones, or the easiest one, was it's just www.wildflower.org. And that one has a whole database. You can search by your state, and then you can even search by, like, if you have a really sunny area that you need plants for, you can search for plants that need full sun. You could search for plants that need shade. You can search by color. You can really customize what native plants you want for that area. So you can also search, you can just go to Google and search like native Michigan plants, and there was just a ton of websites that either will give you a list, or you can get as specific as like Western Michigan, Southern Lower Western Michigan.
unless you're not in Michigan, and then
Right.
research
And you
your
have to
own
find
state.
your own websites.
Do the work
or
yourself.
Plant a bunch of Michigan stuff that will not make sense in any other states, because our climate is insane in
It's
Michigan.
whack.
Also, like I mentioned last week, you can just reach out to like a landscaping company. There are a few in even just our area that focus on native plants or natural landscaping. Once you have everything figured out on what you want to plant and what you want to have in your yard, and if it's going to be stuff that can feed the animals, or something that you might want to use in maybe you're going to start making tea out of these different plants, then you have to plan where everything is going to go in your yard. And the other part of this rewilding or native landscaping or ungardening, they called it softscaping versus landscaping or hardscaping. So instead of using, paver blocks, you're using maybe pea gravel or mulch or tiny stones or sand. Instead of hard plastic edging around your flower beds, you're just leaving it kind of natural and letting the flowers themselves be the edging.
Oh.
I'm assuming we use garden edging and like all of the landscaping fabric and stuff to keep the flowers out of our lush green lawns. But when you're not worried so much about the lawn, it doesn't matter if the plants are kind of overgrowing where their boundary is. The websites also talked about, instead of like a hard plastic fence or a big fence, which can cause a problem for animals because then they can't get through that area, or they get stuck on the other side of it, to use fencing that might be open, or even like berms. So just doing big hills basically that you then fill with flowers and plants and make that more of a natural barrier versus a fence. Or even like hedges. We use our lilac bushes are growing in front of our house as kind of like, not that we need a privacy fence in front of our yard because we're 1,000 feet off the road, but it is definitely building its own privacy fence. These lilac bushes, they just take over, and once they bloom and are full of leaves, then you can't even see through them half the time.
And they smell amazing.
And they smell amazing. It's way better than a plastic picket fence that is probably not even good for the earth that it's in, and is going to contribute to our landfill someday and never break down. You can use natural materials to be able to build walls and berms and privacy. A lot of people nowadays will use trees as fencing instead of fencing.
I have a very similar thing in my front yard that they planted a long time ago.
Yes.
But a really amazing barrier of trees, because we're fairly far off the road, but these trees really hide our house, which is great.
And cuts down on the noise, because on this road, it's a 55-mile-an-hour road. But
Yes.
if you know anything about this area, most people are probably usually doing 65 to 70.
Yeah.
And that can be really loud.
Yes.
Especially if you want to have your windows open during the summer and get the fresh air instead of being, air conditioned locked up all the time.
Yep.
But you're always hearing road noise and what's going on. So building those natural barriers, I think, look better. And obviously you're providing habitats for animals, you're keeping it so these animals can get from place to place. They're not, stuck behind a fence. It's good for the birds, it's good for nature, all of that. And other things that they mentioned, again, you're wanting to look for maybe local stone, local sourced objects. So again, you're not introducing, some stones can leach into the ground. Whatever can come off it, wash off in the rain. You want to make sure that you're thinking about those things responsibly.
And minerals, putting limestone and stuff like that. And
it also depends on kind of what your situation is. We learned at the township limestone, we were talking about putting it in, I think, our natural area for like ADA accessible pathway, but it can be bad for water runoff. You don't want it going into the water.
Right.
But maybe you do need something. Maybe you are in a wheelchair or have some sort of equipment that, crutches or something that you need to assist you to walk. So maybe you do need to think about a harder material to be able to do. But even hard-packed dirt sometimes is easier to deal with than putting in paver stones that then have trip hazards and become unseated. And
in New Zealand, I follow the Viva La Dirt Lake guys. Huge fan of them. I'm surprised I haven't mentioned them on their podcast before because
that's a good point.
Obsession. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the Viva guys, they film in a really cute, quaint little area. But before they had a budget, they would go shoeless. And apparently the ground is packed with dirt and stones, but also seashells because of the area that they're in, which would be so cool if you were near a beach or if that was your natural area to collect and use the seashells, even in like garden edging and stuff like that, because it would still be fairly natural for your area. And love that.
Well, and seashells have calcium, and that can be good for a variety of things. They actually recommend putting seashells in with your chickens because they'll eat at them and they'll get extra calcium that way.
When we built our dog fence area and we were trying to clear it out, we found a ton of seashells, and sometimes we'll still find them. Sometimes we'll catch the dogs eating them. But
need some calcium, Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
good
funny.
for our bones.
Just need a little extra this week. So the how-to of it, I talked about our personal feral gardening, which was basically the lazy way to do things, and how it worked out in our favor because like leaving the leaves on the ground longer is a good thing for the environment and for the pollinators and things. But my in-laws, both my mother and father-in-law and my brother-in-law, are also getting into this rewilding or ungardening, but they're taking much more logical steps to do it and doing the research, and it's just been incredible, the transformation. So what they started doing is, my in-laws have always had this beautiful green yard. They used to host family reunions every couple years, and they took a lot of pride and put a lot of work into having this really beautiful lawn that everybody could gather on. And they still had flower beds, but they were kind of on the outskirts. They were kind of a fence. They fenced in the yard a little bit. And then over the last couple of years, they've started, my mother-in-law retired, which is a big part of it because now she has more time. But she's been adding more and more flowers, and they built up a big berm, and she was still running out of space. And then this past fall, what they did is, my brother-in-law can get like really giant pieces of cardboard from his job, and they put the cardboard down in the grass and kind of made like pathways that the beds would be and made it look really cool. And then you leave the cardboard there, you put dirt, leaves, whatever on top of it, leave it for the winter, and that cardboard kills all that grass and then starts to break down with the material that you put on it, and just cardboard is biodegradable and becomes a good planting area. So in a season, my mother-in-law went from like one berm flower bed to all of this planting area. So they went from a lush green grass lawn And now I would guess 75% of their lawn is flower beds and vegetable garden.
That's awesome.
It just seems like such an easy way to, because getting rid of grass is actually hard. We've built these lawns over the decades to be pretty sturdy. They get into the ground, you plant certain types of grass and it can be kind of invasive. It's hard to get rid of. It kills everything around it. You can't just plant a flower in the middle of the grass. It chokes it out.
And you're going to mow over the top of it anyway. So even if the flower might thrive, you're still going to kill it. Mm-hmm. You're going to chop it right off.
You got to take care of your lawn and, get the pesticides
and
out to get rid of the dandelions.
I think about people who might be moving into a new home for the first time. How else is a more perfect way to get rid of those boxes?
Yeah.
Look out in your yard, start planning. Maybe you can't do it the first summer you move in because
chaos.
Yes, ain't nobody got time for that. But store those boxes in a pile, break them down, set them down. You have them then to go out there and you can use them and utilize them and do this, create this, or kill off I'm going to have to use this plan now to kill off my grass for clover.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure how we were going to do it. I thought we were going to have to rototill it all up, which
and
might
that sounds
still
painful.
Ugh.
Or dig it all up and drag it out. And grass is heavy and dirt is heavy. And where do you put all of that?
When I think about going out and weeding my flower beds, I think of when there's grass in there and I have to go pull it out. Sometimes it does not want to come out, or it comes out in these huge clumps that take all the dirt with it and stuff. So I love that idea.
I was so impressed, and they turned out beautiful. And now she has this whole, she planned it all out and drew it all out, so it's pathways. And then in those pathways, I don't remember what material she used, but it's just a natural material. They're natural little walkways. You're not stepping on paver stone. She has some, especially up in her berm, she used some old leftover paver stones. But it's just natural. You walk outside and she has this beautiful yard, all of these flowers, and a little bit of grass, and it's incredible. It's beautiful. Plus, she's, like I talked about a few podcasts ago, she's getting her plants from her neighbors, from her friends, from my grandma. So my mother-in-law and father-in-law befriended my grandma on my dad's side. And so now my mother-in-law has outdoor plants that my grandma has been growing for years.
What a combination of families. That's symbolically so cool.
We are pretty lucky in that fact. And I'm obviously not at a stage where I'm really focused on outdoor anything right now. So I'm not going and getting my grandma's, heirloom plants that she's been raising all these years. But knowing that my mother-in-law has them now.
They're going to be accessible to you even if, say, your grandma's home gets sold or something.
Or if something awful happened. But I know now that I have a place to get these things. And that my mother-in-law is great. She knows the stories. She can walk me through her garden and tell me, I got this one from my friend Tony's garden, and I got this one from your grandma's garden, and this one came from so-and-so 12 years ago, and I've kept it alive all these years, or I split it off from that plant over there. She saves plants for me and for my brother-in-law. Once stuff starts to become overgrown, if she has extra, she pulls it all out, she puts it in buckets. Sometimes I come home and she's been at my house and planted plants for me. Like, one time she showed up and just left them in buckets, and most of them died because I did not get them in the ground.
And now we know why she plants them for you.
And so now she just shows up and she plants them for me. And she's smart enough that she picks things that I can't, or if I do forget about it or don't care for it, it will still bloom. And so now I have all these beautiful flowers, and I know they're from my mother-in-law, and it was something she cared about. It's just, I love everything about plants, obviously.
What I'm taking from this is that I need to befriend your mother-in-law.
Yes.
Because while I don't have a ton of plants inside, I have a fair amount outside, and I add, I don't want to say this out loud, hundreds of dollars worth of them every year. Even when I go to the greenhouse and I'm like, I'm only going to buy flowers for my pots this year because I like Gerber daisies and things. And then an interesting, unique perennial will grab my attention, like a completely white bleeding heart. Bleeding hearts are one of my most favorite.
Those.
Lilies are my top favorite, which is great because they grow in Michigan. Superb.
And they will spread themselves everywhere.
Yes, I even have some that are as tall as my 7-year-old, and they're some of my favorites. They're gorgeous. But these bleeding hearts, they bloom in the early spring. They look amazing. So they're one of my favorite spring flowers, I guess is what I should say safely. But I found a completely white version, and she did not bloom this year.
Oh.
But she did grow, and she's getting larger, and then I accidentally raked her and broke her in half. But she's still growing, and she's sturdy again. So she probably won't flower for me this year, but I think next year we're going to have some white bleeding hearts.
Oh, that would be amazing. So the one rule my mother-in-law breaks is she does not necessarily keep to like the native plants.
Sure.
But she's also out there every single day.
Right.
It's not like she's putting these plants in the ground and then they're going to take over and go crazy. You know, she even she gets like paint sticks or even a bag of like shims, and that's how she'll label all her stuff. So she's not even using plastic
That's
garden
great.
stakes anymore. She's using wood stakes, and that helps her keep it straight, because that's the other problem I would have.
Yes.
Is once I have that many flowers, like I don't know what anything is anymore.
I also face the problem where I buy a lot of clearance flowers at the end of the year, and so I plant them, and then as they're coming up the next year, I'm like, oh, what kind of weed is that? And then I pull it out and it has a bulb on the bottom, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
yeah, right.
I paid money for that one.
I shouldn't have done that.
She does have some of that, she said, but a lot of it is learning. You know,
Yeah.
she's changed so much of what she does just over the last couple of years as she learns what works for her and what doesn't work and what's good for them and their giant dog and cat and all of that.
Well, then, if you're in an area like Arizona, I imagine you have to think entirely differently than we have to here in Michigan.
Did you? So when I went to Arizona, they have aloe plants that just grow in like in the walkway. We toured. I don't know. We just happened to stay somewhere that was near university campus, University of Arizona, and like all their landscaping was like aloe and succulents and cactuses and palm trees, and it was so cool to see how different, because none of that would ever. That's stuff we have to grow indoors in Michigan. It's not an option to put it outside.
Yeah, aloe goes in a pot and it sits on your porch in the summer and inside your house all winter and fall.
And it stays pretty small because it has to stay in a pot,
Yep.
and it doesn't grow to be like 2 feet big because it's inside. But
It's because they have so much more sunburn.
yes, they need it down there. So yeah, every place is going to have different plants and different things that go well. And there are some plants in Michigan that are not native that will grow here in the summer and then die in the winter.
Sure.
I don't know what the safety on that would be, like if it would be considered invasive. I think it would depend on
If it spreads,
winter like killed
if it's
it,
able, yeah.
or if it would just go dormant and then start growing again once it got warm.
I think there are hibiscus pants.
I love hibiscus plants.
Who doesn't, really? Hibiscus plants that you can purchase to grow, and then you either have to bring them inside over the winter, or you have to like wrap them.
Yes, okay.
And they will come back. I don't think they spread because I don't think that it's hospitable for them to spread, and so they won't keep going. But that is a very interesting thought. Something definitely to research, because what if it takes over?
Right. And like the mint. So last year we noticed it was mint and we were super excited and I was all about it, and then I noticed it was kind of getting a little out of control, and then I learned this year that mint can be a problem and you do have to keep an eye on it.
We live on what used to be an old farm. So one summer we were out just walking the property and we noticed one of those little plastic tags that you were talking about that said broccoli, which was fun. And then we went a little further and we noticed actual asparagus.
Oh, that's right. You found
So
wild asparagus.
Yes, yeah. And the funniest thing about asparagus is that asparagus grows in a way that looks like someone went to the grocery store and bought asparagus and then jabbed it into the ground. It's a really funny thing to look at. But actually, if you've ever seen it get too big, it becomes sort of like a weird ferny plant.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool.
They're kind of pretty.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, once they hit that stage, you can't eat them. And we've gone out a couple of summers and tried to get it, but the deer usually beat us to it. So, but it was really fun thing to catch. And we actually noticed that we have a random wild rose bush growing that we just caught this year. We've been here 5 years, but it's the first year we noticed it because we're moving our way to that area of the yard. And then grapes. We have grapevines over there too.
That's did you know that when you
We suspected, but we weren't sure. And they're not in a way that they can climb and actually thrive.
Right.
They just kind of grow, look cool for a second, and then flop on the ground and get eaten.
Grapes always scare me because somebody told me about giants. I think it was my mother-in-law actually. She went to pick grapes off the vine one time and there was a giant spider, and she said she never picked grapes after that. And I was like, yeah, me neither. Now I won't ever
Now
again.
we're done with that. Ryan's grandpa grew them, so he's really excited to see if we can tend them and grow some and harvest some.
Yeah. Could make wine out of those too.
Yeah.
Dandelion wine.
And yes, that's from last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be super cool, and I think it's also great for Carly because she gets to see how these things grow. And while at 7 she doesn't really care, she still can't help but to see it.
Yes.
Every time we go outside to water plants and stuff, I'm pointing them out. Carly, look how close these are to blooming. And she loves tomatoes right off the vine.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to say, okay, you better check your tomato plants. She'll say, oh, they're turning yellow. We'll say, oh, great, they're going to be red soon. You just got to keep an eye on them, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. So
while she's not necessarily purposely learning, she doesn't have a choice. It's soaking in, she's catching on. And I love it.
That's one of my favorite memories of my papa growing up. He always had a big garden. We ate tomatoes, cucumbers, and green peppers with almost every meal as soon as it was that time of year that they were ripe. My favorite thing my papa did, and was actually something I was going to mention anyway, he would grow pumpkins. And the cool thing about pumpkins is when they start growing, when they're little and green, if you carve or scratch something into that outside, it will scar. And as the pumpkin grows, that whatever you etched or scratched into the side of it will grow with the pumpkin.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
I'll find a picture and I'll post it to our Facebook. He would use our kid. There was a couple of us kids, my cousins and some neighbor kids that we adopted. He would scratch our names into the pumpkins when they were little, so all summer we'd get to watch our pumpkin grow. It's literally my favorite memory of him. It is the coolest thing he ever did. And the crazy thing about pumpkins that I've learned as an adult is a lot of people will find surprise pumpkin patches because you carve your pumpkin.
Yeah.
Or you get a pumpkin for Halloween, you forget about it, you toss it off into the back of the property to get rid of it, or get rid of the guts after you carve it, or get rid of the pumpkins after the holiday and they start to get mushy. And if you remember where you've planted them, sometimes they'll just take off. And I've had friends like on Facebook that are walking through their yard and realize they have a pumpkin patch growing, which is ridiculous because every time I've tried to grow pumpkins, they do not work. I cannot grow a pumpkin to save my life. But other people can grow them accidentally just by leaving the seeds in their yard.
I'm going to have to check that because we always throw our pumpkins out in the back field because we figure the deer eat them, or the raccoons, or whatever creatures going through our yard that day. I never once thought to check to see if they missed a few seeds or whatnot. Oh my gosh.
Yes, so pumpkins are on my list as I said, I have not mastered them yet, but that is my favorite gardening memories. And I did all of that, like you were talking about with Carly. You know, I went out and I pulled the bugs off the tomato plants, and I helped gather all of the vegetables that were ready and helped prepare them. The one thing I never got to do was learn how to can them.
Sure.
But that's a huge benefit for gardening. And so then you have all of those vegetables throughout the year. My grandma used to make pickles. She used to can or jar pickles.
That explains so much.
Yes. Horseradish. She would make homemade horseradish, pickled beets, all kinds of stuff. That got me way off topic.
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
It was a really cool thing to talk about, so I'm good with it.
Whenever I think about Papa and you, I think of the picture of you in the wheelbarrow, and it's also full of pumpkins.
Yes, tiny little one.
Yeah.
I'll find that one too. I have that one, and it must have been my pumpkin from that same year, because I'm the same gangly 10-year-old in both pictures, but I will find those. So I guess just to wrap up a little bit, so you go over you find out what plants you want, you do all your native planting, you make this beautiful oasis of native plants and low care, and you're not mowing all the time, you have all this time back. So there are a ton of benefits to this rewilding or this ungardening. And the websites, the research I did was all very biased towards it being favorable. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't looking for anything that was like, here are the downsides. But there would be potentially some downside. Obviously, if you're
HOAs
putting more plants in and putting more things in, and you're not using pesticides, and you're trying to be careful about that, you're probably going to see an increase in bugs. And depending on who you are and how much your children hate bugs, that could be a good or a bad thing.
So you'd want to research natural bug
remedies. So either
well.
natural bug remedies, or I'm trying to do a really good job with Connor in explaining why bugs are good. You know, we try not to be scared of spiders. We try not to be scared of bees, because now that we're adults, we know that bees are important and we need these bugs. And really, a spider is not going to kill you. I mean, even if you got bit by a brown recluse spider, you would probably be uncomfortable for a while, and you might need, a little bit of medical care to get that cleaned up, but it's probably not going to kill you. So I don't want my kid to be running from every spider he sees when the chance of it actually hurting him is negligible. And it's so much better to have these bugs and these species of bugs outside and doing their jobs and eating the mosquitoes and doing all those things that are beneficial for us. The other downside or issue might be if you do live in a neighborhood with an HOA, or even some local governments have ordinances and regulations on how long your grass can be and how it has to be tidy and kept and beautiful. So if you live in somewhere like a subdivision and you try to start having a wildflower yard, you might have to fight with your local government officials to either argue that the ordinance shouldn't be, because now we know that it would be beneficial to have wildflower gardens in the middle of these neighborhoods, and that maybe grass isn't so good for all of us, and all the water that you're spending trying to keep this grass green. But if you don't have the time or energy or money to fight these local governments, then you're probably just going to give in and do what they want you to do, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Other downsides would be you're probably going to have more wildlife in your yard, so the deer are going to come eat your plants and your flowers and your things, both because you're planting beautiful, delicious things that they want to eat, but also because you're not using any barriers to keep them out necessarily. We just kind of learned to deal with that. I had a lot of issues. I mean, the raccoon that would take one single bite of my vegetables and leave the rest.
Sharing.
He's such a jerk. And, I would be sad about the deer that came in and they ate the blooms off my lilacs or whatever. But they were here before us. They're just trying to survive. They're not maliciously eating my plants because they want me to have a bad day. So that I try to teach Connor that too. It's like, we have to share our world with them. we're infringing on their space. We're building into their environments. Like, sorry that I don't get to have nice flowers all the time, but also the deer are really cute by my house, and I like to see them every day. So if that means I have to sacrifice some flowers, darn.
And I think, too, if you really got into it, you could plant something deer-friendly farther away from your stuff so that you could kind of draw them away. Like corn.
Zach and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
If we ever go back to having a big garden, the best place we have is kind of far out. And I was like, man, how are we going to keep the deer from eating it without putting up like an 8-foot tall fence?
Right.
And we talked about that, putting deer-friendly, yummy deer snacks on the outside of the garden, closer to the woods where they're coming from, and distracting them with those things. And
or
then,
you release bears.
I mean, it works in that there was an old lady that swallowed a fly.
Exactly.
But, right? You
Exactly.
gotta eat the mouse, or eat something
Eat the
to
cat
catch
to
the
get the
fly,
mouse. Yeah.
and then eat the
Yeah.
dog to eat the cat that ate
Yeah.
the fly. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
So,
dogs love to eat
just
cats.
release some bears to
Yeah.
eat the deer.
This doesn't seem like a problem at
To
all.
keep them from eating my vegetables.
And then the elephant can stomp the bears.
I mean, so I get an elephant? At
Several,
the end of
obviously.
Because I'm seeing no downsides here. I get deer and bears and an elephant. Yes.
Sold. I'm sorry.
And that's how the Fagan farm began.
The illegal.
The
highly
very
illegal.
illegal Fagan farm.
No, we can't put up fences. We're doing natural. Also, we're releasing our elephants today.
I'm pretty sure my local government ordinances do not specifically tell me I cannot have an elephant.
Then you're in.
Yeah.
That's it. Done.
And if it does say that, I know somebody that can change it. Or at least ask a board of people to change it. And then the last thing I could come up with for downsides would just be if you're one of those people that really likes everything to look nice and orderly. Especially when you're starting out, it's probably going to look a little messy. It's probably going to be a little disorganized. And if you're used to all those solid lines of garden edging and everything being in nice little boxes, then maybe it'll drive you crazy. I don't know.
But I do think, too, you could work around that even. I think maybe a natural wood box, like driftwood here in Michigan would be a very natural thing. You could go collect and build your own little lines and things like that.
I've seen people use dead logs as planters.
Yeah.
Because you've already got all that organic food material.
Yeah.
Just put some dirt in there and it feeds off the decay from the log, and you have a really cool looking natural planter, basically.
Absolutely. I even think you could use things. I've seen things like glass bottles, which I know are not natural, but if you clean them up well, I don't see why you couldn't, because you're still recycling and that's still helpful.
You're reusing, so you're not putting it in the landfill. So
if you can't handle those, like you said, open edges and things like that, I absolutely think you could work around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if an unpopular opinion next week is that you don't like feral gardening, we can't help you.
No, you should probably just stop listening now. Just kidding. Please don't stop.
Don't stop listening. Don't ever stop listening.
I probably won't talk about feral gardening again. This is probably the last time.
Until she finds out something cool. And then she absolutely
Or when I get really into completing it and then I have to talk about it again to show everybody all the cool stuff we did.
Yeah.
If that ever happens.
But if it does, that'll be so far away you'll forget that you hated us for it.
Yeah. And you'll have been listening for a while, so you'll love us
You'll
anyway.
be loyal. And we love you, by the way. Thank you for being loyal. We've had some super cool comments.
It's really cool to hear
big
that
love.
people are enjoying listening to us.
Yeah. We love it. We're so excited. So I'm so sorry. I keep interrupting you. I'm terrible this week.
You are terrible.
Dang it.
And
excuse me. I gotta pause. Gotta pause the podcast so I can go cry.
it would not be the first time Jessica has cried during these podcast episodes. I mean, usually it's tears of laughter, but we really try to have all the emotions
tears
here
are
at
tears.
Dungeons and Dopamine. Dungeons and Dragons and Dopamine.
I'm just gonna slowly but surely change it to Dungeons and Dragons, and then I'm just gonna be Jessica and Dragons. And then it's gonna just be Jessica. No dragons.
It's just you
Just me.
talking, but never about
crying.
dragons.
Or dungeons, or dopamine, or you.
This sounds awful. Worst podcast ever.
Look. I have no way to disagree with you because you're completely right. But I don't have to like it.
True. So, what brought you dopamine this week?
All right, I'm gonna shock everybody and say it's more folklore.
Yay!
Folklore.
Folklore. I've been looking forward to more folklore.
I figured you were. I could see it in your eyes last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to wrap it up this week, and I'm going to talk. I focused on the Nordic folklore, and I focused on the English folklore, and I thought it was time to just take a little bit from everywhere else. Now, this is not because I couldn't find enough for each area, because there is so much fantastic folklore out there that I didn't think anybody would want to continuously hear me reading off lists of folklore.
We'd have to change the title to
We would.
Dungeons and Folklore.
Dragons
all we
and
talk about.
folklore.
Dungeons and Dragons and Folklore and plants. That's all we talk about. Those 4 topics.
Exactly. So this is gonna wrap up. I do have a little bit of like food for thought for everybody, and let us know if one of these become your unpopular opinion, because I think my version of it is a little bit of an unpopular opinion. Mm-hmm. So let's start off in North America and Canada with Wendigos, which I think a lot of people have heard of.
Yes.
So Wendigos are created from humans. It is a human who at some time in their life consumed human meat. They were cannibalistic, whether it was out of absolute necessity or just desire. Ugh. They did. And once they did, that thought consumed everything for them. And slowly but surely, they would start to turn gray and start to sink in on themselves. So they became kind of a decaying skeletal human. They don't have lips because the lips will just get in the way of eating the flesh.
Can't have flesh getting in the way of feeding flesh. Gross. I don't ever want to say that sentence ever again.
I'm not sure I appreciate that you did. I'm gonna ask our
And that's
sound
when we
crew.
lost all
of our
all of our
viewers.
listeners.
So I was just gonna make it worse by saying I was gonna have our sound crew, who's Ryan, take that snippet and put like squelching noises.
Oh, gross.
And
Don't do
now
that, Ryan.
we've lost. Don't listen to her, Ryan. You live with me. He's cutting all of
If
this
you
out.
want your unpopular opinion to be
His unpopular opinion is going to be Jessica's not funny. She's obnoxious. Everyone's going to be like, that's not unpopular.
no, I disagree. It's a very unpopular opinion.
I gave you hearts. So, the Wendigos are very greedy in that all they want and all they can think about is human flesh in devouring it. Moving on.
Right.
This is actually an England-based folklore, but I liked it so much. I used the phrase like kind of lightly because these are all super creepy, but I liked it so much I needed to throw it in. And I missed it while I was looking at my other English ones. So these are the Kuri, and these are invisible little creepers who hang out near the graves of people who have died on the moor. And these will latch onto you. And like I said, they're invisible. They have no physical form. So they'll just whisper in your ear and tell you things. And then they'll start appearing in your dreams.
Oh.
And the longer they're with you and the more they start to drive you crazy, they get stronger and stronger. Eventually, if you and I maybe are having a conversation and there's one on your shoulder talking to you, I might see a flash of it on your face instead of your face.
Oh.
The stronger it gets, the more it will try and convince you that it will leave you alone if you go back to the moors. Or I guess go to the moors. You're not going back because you're not the one that died on the moors. But anyway, it will get you back to the moors. And while you're there, it'll tell you, no, just a little bit further, and then I'll leave you alone. And it'll have you go round and round and walk until you literally just die and collapse.
Oh my gosh.
They're so creepy. Someone on the internet, I thought this was absolutely wonderful, said that it sounds like a big metaphor for depression.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing. Like, I didn't put it together when I read it because I sort of take these at the face value for the silly like fear of it or whatnot. But I thought that was really wise.
And I wonder how much folklore is based on trying to give explanations to things they couldn't at that time. Mental illness,
madnesses,
like depression.
And that absolutely is a great theory. Now I'm kind of wishing I'd have dived into that.
And on next week's episode.
Exactly. I lied about being done with folklore.
Folklore and mental health.
I think you're right. That's that and warning and scaring people away from doing things. So I thought that one was nice and creepy. This next one is taking us to Latin America, and this one's really popular too. La Llorona. A lot of people have heard about her. So she was once a beautiful woman named Maria who found out that her husband was cheating on her. And in a fit of madness, she thought the best way to get back at her husband was to drown her children. When she came to, she realized what she had done, and she drowned herself. Now, the theory is that she wanders at night crying, looking for children, her children specifically, to apologize to them. So if she catches the children out alone at night, she will kidnap them, beg them for forgiveness, and then drown them.
She just does not seem to be doing well.
No, and I feel like she doesn't understand forgiveness.
It's not really how it works.
No. Like, forgive me.
Forgive me for doing this awful thing again.
I don't laugh at drowning children, gosh. Please. No, I'm not laughing at that. But the idea of her asking for forgiveness, like, I'm so sorry I punched you in the face.
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna be sad about it now. I hate that I keep hurting people.
So sad. They do say that if you hear her crying, you'll have a shorter life.
How do you know if it's her crying or just someone crying?
That's a really good question. Maybe you feel it in your heart.
I wonder how many people freaked out because they thought they heard her crying, but it was really like a neighbor.
Or a baby or something.
Like, it's that woman again.
Their neighbor had depression and was out crying every night.
Right.
No.
Watch it, reading sad books and just cries in her backyard, and her neighbor thinks this...
It's very therapeutic for her.
Yeah. This other neighbor thinks that there's a dead woman trying to come steal her children to drown them.
Oh gosh. That one does make me think though, like, if your mom had told us when we were kids hanging out, if we went out too far, like off your road, La Llorona was going to come for us, you bet we would not have left our road.
Exactly.
So this next one I threw in very much on purpose because she reminds me of something we talked about in Nordic folklore. And we both agreed that she was terrifying. And this is Sadako. She's from Japan. She is very literally the ring girl.
Oh, yes.
So, I think most people are familiar with the movie The Ring. It is based in... It came... how do I say this? It came from a movie created in Japan, based off of this folklore. Now, apparently, you can actually call Sadako on the phone. One of the things I watched did give you the phone number, but I did not write it down, nor did I call it, because no.
She will come through your phone with her creepy hair in front of her eyes, and you will never sleep again.
Nope. So I didn't, but you apparently can. And when you call, you will hear a high-pitched noise. A high-pitched noise. And that noise is reported to have made people really uneasy. And then people won't necessarily die from calling, but they will experience really poor luck for a while. Now, this reminded me a great deal of the Nutmara, who can turn into sand. I actually think she's still creepier. She's
sand
she's
can get anywhere.
I hate sand. Gets everywhere. Anyway, that was a Star Wars quote. This one you might like, because this one is Celtic. Yay! Zach will like this. Shout out. And this would be the Kelpie, who's also pretty familiar, I think, especially if you're into fantasy stories and such. And this is an aquatic horse. And you will know that the Kelpie is, in fact, a Kelpie by the fact that no matter how long it is out of a body of water, its mane and tail are perpetually wet. So they're usually
not ride wet horses.
Never. I don't know how I feel about that advice. But sure.
Yes.
It makes me uncomfortable. So they're usually a large, very beautiful black horse, and you'll typically find them near their body of water. Now, if you touch or mount the horse, you will get stuck, and it will take you into the water and drown you and eat you. That's why it's there.
Everything eats you.
Yeah. Now, a lot of the stories for today, a lot of the creatures for today, I have stories for. Some of them are fabulous, such as this one. So there was a group of boys out in the woods, and they saw a horse, and they approached it, and they were petting it. One of the boys noticed... He looked down and noticed his fingers were stuck on the horse. He couldn't take them off. And upon inspection, looking down even further, he noticed that the horse's hooves were backwards. So he actually used his knife to cut off his fingers and escape. But the 3 boys that were with him, his friends, all disappeared. And later they found parts of them.
Oh.
And they had been eaten. So...
Ugh.
I hate
that one's creepy.
Yeah. The backward hooves and stuff. That noise might have been worse than the story. This next one's also super creepy, and it also has to do with the Kelpie. A Redditor was he was in Ireland with his grandparents. He was staying on their farm, and one night his grandmother woke up because she heard the cows mooing. And you know, when you have an animal, you start to understand its different noises. If it's a dog and it's barking a certain way, that's its aggressive bark. There's something wrong going on.
Someone's here.
Yeah. Or your cat meows and you're like, that sounds like my cat is stuck somewhere. We've had cats stuck in like the ceiling and stuff before because she's insane. So Grandma noticed that the cows were mooing in a very panicked way, like a predator or something was around. So she stepped outside to check on them, and her grandson, the Redditor, this boy, was heading toward the pond. And she tried to call out to him, and he didn't acknowledge her. So he was starting to walk into the pond. So she grabbed him, pulled him out of the water, brought him into the house, and he was still almost like fast asleep. So she shook him, and woke him up and said, "What were you doing?" And he replied, and he was still half asleep, that he was just following the pony
Oh my. Right into the water. Like sleepwalking.
Yeah, sleepwalking directly into the water.
Kelpies.
Yeah.
They'll get you even when you're sleeping.
Yeah, it's a good thing we aren't Irish. It's a good thing we're going to New Zealand, not Ireland. Mm-hmm. New Zealand's not going to let us in if they hear this podcast. So, anyway, we're coming back to the U.S. Mm-hmm. And these ones I think are actually incredibly cool. These are the Night Marchers, and they can be found in Hawaii.
Ooh.
We should probably go look for them. So, you'll potentially start to hear some drums if you're out at night. This is typically on trails or beaches, and very barren ones where there's not a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And you'll see these torches and start hearing the drums, and you are to step off the trail immediately and place your forehead down on the ground. Because what these are Hawata. Please forgive me if I've said that incorrectly, but I believe it's Hawata warriors, and they are on their march. Mm-hmm. So these were old warriors who they're long gone, obviously, and they are still marching their warpaths. Now, if you are of Hawaiian ancestry and one of your ancestors is marching with them, you are allowed to watch the procession.
How do you know?
That is just a chance you have to take. So I don't think I would. I certainly am not Hawaiian ancestry at all.
Right. Pretty easy answer for me, too.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have family that lives in Hawaii, but...
Do you?
They would not have been related to me when they were warriors.
So, I think this one's kind of cool. I think it's kind of a cool show of respect and stuff like that. Just what a great bit of history. I don't have a lot on them, but
because nobody can watch them.
That's right, exactly. And the information of the torches being warnings came directly from a Hawaiian. So, someone of Hawaiian ancestry. Forgive me if Hawaiian is a very insensitive term. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Please correct us if we're wrong.
Send it to unpopular opinions.
Yes. If you're like, unpopular opinion, you guys are a-holes.
Popular opinion. You guys are a-holes.
Oh, and we're laughing. We're still in the U.S. Mm-hmm. This is a Navajo tradition. This is very creepy if you start to think of the implications. This is skinwalkers.
Oh, I know a lot about skinwalkers.
So, from what I read, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I might not know as much as you. These are Native American witches who, in their lives, murdered someone who they cared about. And when they come back, they appear as a distorted, unnatural-looking animal. They do seem to favor deer or bears occasionally. And there was... Oh, dogs. Dog was another one. So... The older a skinwalker gets, the more convincing they can be as an animal. So if you see one that's very distorted, is very clearly a skinwalker, you know it's a younger skinwalker. Now, a lot of these guys will leave you alone. However, sometimes they won't. If they decide not to, some stories say that they can only repeat the last phrase that their last victim said.
Ooh, creepy.
Yeah. Most agree that they all have a very small vocabulary, and that to get you to them, they will yell from the forest. Sometimes something very generic like help. Sometimes they will yell to you from voices you're familiar with and try to lure you out. And then if you spook them, as their animal form, they will stand up on two legs and run away. And
can you imagine? You're like, there's a wolf staring at you, and something is tempting you to go in the woods, and then like somebody comes home and like turns a light on, and the wolf just like pops up on two legs and runs into the woods. Probably making some weird noise from
the last victim.
Help!
Oh.
Oh.
I got severe goosebumps from that. Ugh. I just
Yep. Yep. Ooh.
So, we needed to take a happy break and watch like SpongeBob or something. Actually, SpongeBob can get creepy too.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be like Care Bears
Care
or
Bear,
something.
yeah, absolutely. Eureka's Castle.
Yeah. We should just do that on an episode.
We should.
Just watch old cartoons.
I love Eureka's Castle. This is the second time we've proposed this, so
It's gonna have to happen now.
I think so. So, let's move on from that creepiness and talk about La Loze Mala. These are from Argentina. These are more lights. So, these are the souls of the dead presented as lights. Unfortunately, they are unable to move on. They bring you bad luck. If you see one, it's said that you need to bite down on the sheath of a knife while saying a prayer. It's a specific prayer. Yeah, very strange. This one, I like this one a lot. I don't know why, because it's a cat. This is called the Yule cat. This is Icelandic, so it does tie a little into the Nordic. And the Yule cat started as a giant cat with large razor-sharp whiskers and sharp claws, of course. He will eat children who did not receive new clothing for Christmas. Nowadays, he's still out there, but now he just eats your treats.
Oh,
So
well,
if you don't get new
much
clothes for
nicer of
Christmas, he eats your treats. I don't know why. It seems
probably
really rude.
for parents to convince their children
that they
want
should be happy
clothes
with
for
socks.
Christmas.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's
They were like, stop being disappointed over these clothes I bought you. Otherwise, I already forgot.
Yule cat
The Yule cat
is
will
going
come
to eat your face.
you.
Yeah.
And then some parent was like, that seems a little extreme. How about he just eats your treats?
He'll come eat your treats. No, this parent was actually like, shoot, I forgot to buy the treats.
Or, I don't want to share these treats.
That's
Sorry, honey, not only did I not buy you any new clothes, but you also don't get any treats.
100% what happened. Guaranteed. I'm 100% convinced of that. Yule Cat does make an appearance in one of the camping books.
Does it?
So
I'm excited.
I just want to talk about I just want to read the camping books on podcast and just let everyone enjoy them. But one that probably isn't right to Bonnie.
It's probably a little illegal.
She did give a few people permission to read them on YouTube, and I'm sure they don't sound like me.
Is that what you sound like?
That's exactly what I sound like.
Weird.
It's so strange. I hear you all the time.
Never noticed that before.
Oh boy. So anyway, let's move on to the Drag Duar. This is also Irish. She's a beautiful woman. She fell in love in her life with a peasant boy, and she wanted to marry him, and her father said no. And he married her off instead to a wealthy man who became abusive.
Of course.
Of course. She killed herself out of rage, sadness, woe is me.
Spite.
Yeah. I don't know why she didn't take him out, but she does eventually.
Oh,
She
good.
comes back as very similar to a vampire. She's very beautiful looking. She killed her father and her husband and drank their blood. And now she goes after men who treat women poorly.
I kind of like her.
Yeah. I'm not sorry.
No. She can come hang out here.
She's no. I take that back.
No special podcast episode for her.
She cannot guest star. Alright, so this one is my final kind of older folklore. And I was actually on TikTok the other day, and I went past a live of a Russian man who was dressed as an elf. So I, of course, had to stop and see why he was dressed like an elf and tell him that I thought it was cool that he was dressed like an elf.
Because it is.
Exactly. And I told him that I do a podcast and that I've been talking about folklore from around the world. And I asked him for a Russian folklore. And he stopped and he thought about it for a minute and he said, talk about the domovoi. Once again, forgive me. How many times do I have to say that? If I didn't say it right, just tell me. Don't yell at me.
She's trying really hard,
I'm
okay?
trying my best. So, the domovoi is the master of the house. He holds the secret to a happy household. He often takes the shape of a small old man covered in white or black shaggy hair. He loves cozy spaces and will often be found snuggled by the oven or in another warm area. If you find him in your home, you must be kind to him. That respect thing. And he will become a delightful companion. That's a direct quote. And I love it. And, okay, hang on. I gotta finish this. And then I think I have a theory.
Yay.
If he does not take a shine to you, he will misbehave, breaking dishes, and kind of just torturing the homeowners. Not physically torturing them,
Right.
But have you ever seen the cartoon Booba?
Yes.
I wonder if Booba is based off of this, because he is shaggy, white-haired, little, tiny guy, and he's very silly, but I have to wonder if this is what he's from. Yeah. He's not causing chaos on purpose.
Malicious.
No. Booba is Russian as well, so I do have to wonder. I did not have time to, I know it seems like a really easy thing to research, but I did not have the time to research it. But that is 1000% what I thought of when I read this description.
Yes.
So
I love that theory.
I like it, and I really liked that I was able to reach out to an actual live person, connect with him, and talk to him about this. And I'm so sorry. I should have written his name down, but if I find him, I can repost one of his TikToks on Facebook or something, and you guys can follow him or whatnot. Tell him thanks for teaching us about the domovoi.
Yeah.
So I'm going to branch again and start talking a little bit about some modern day folklore, which is kind of a trigger. There are a lot of people out there who do not believe that what I'm about to talk about is actually folklore. It is, to me, very much folklore. I think folklore begins with someone telling someone a story and them sharing it. But the internet makes it easier to share, so it goes a lot faster. So take this as you will. It's a hot topic. I think that personally these are very much modern folklore.
Okay.
So this is very popular. I think everyone listening will know of this. And unfortunately, it's because it's grounded in some tragedy. Slender Man.
Oh, Slender Man.
Good old Slendy. He is a fictional character. He was created as a creepypasta on the internet. A lot of what I'm about to talk about came from creepypasta. And he's depicted as thin and incredibly tall. He's humanoid, but with no features on his face. And he's wearing a black suit. Sometimes his arms are long tentacles, and sometimes his arms are just long arms.
Yeah, like creepy.
Yes. He's unnaturally long in that way. He stalks and terrifies people. He often targets children. He can distort sound and optics sometimes. He's been in movies, games, shorts. If you search him on the internet, there are some incredibly talented people out there who have put him in images. Slenderman doesn't scare me a lot, but the images are kind of creepy. They come to me as sort of like, oh, haha, what a talented artist. But they can be incredibly creepy because they look very authentic. Now, the reason that Slenderman is so popular is probably because he was the topic of a tragedy. A lot of people have heard about it. The 12-year-old girls who lured their friend out in the woods and hurt her to offer to Slenderman. She was okay. She survived it. I don't want to get too deep because that's not something she
gross
wants back in
story.
her life. Yeah. But that was in 2014, and it caused such a huge stir.
Mm-hmm.
So another one that I think actually might have caused more of a stir than Slender Man was Momo.
I forgot about Momo.
Yes. I just want to say...
She was going to steal our children, hurt our children,
She's
or
gonna
cause
have them
our
hurt
children
themselves.
to hurt. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yep. So Momo started off as a sculpture by, and I'm going to give this guy some credit. He was a crazy cool guy, and I'll explain why I think that later on. But he made this, I guess it's very talented, but I think she's super icky. He made this sculpture. It is very much supposed to be a horror sculpture, and it is. And when she started to kind of circulate the internet, instead of just being this sculpture, someone created Momo. And someone sent out a tweet, I was going to say a tweet that said Momo is in YouTube videos and memes and TV shows, or like internet shows, whatnot. And she was telling your children to hurt themselves or hurt others or steal or break things so she wouldn't come and hurt their families. And they were using the image of this face. And I looked it up to research it. It's still creepy, even 1000% knowing what it is.
She was
Icky. It still gives me the heebie-jeebies. So he did a great job on his sculpture. But it did turn out to all be a big hoax. There are some people who say that they've seen it. I firsthand had people tell me that they'd seen it and they experienced it within a video. I don't know if that's true, and I don't know if it was something that someone randomly did to scare people. Thankfully, showed up being a hoax. The cool thing is that this artist took his own sculpture that probably took him hours and destroyed it. And he put it out there, and he said, I want kids to know that Momo is gone.
Aww.
I know, good guy
what a
artist.
Nice guy.
I know, I loved it. So, now I read that on the internet, so it might not be true, but I like to think it is. Moving on from Momo, because she's creepy, are the black-eyed kids, or the black-eyed children. These are also a big one on creepypasta. They did start in the 80s, so pre-creepypasta. These are children who will approach you in your home or your car and ask to be let in. This typically happens at the time of day where there shouldn't be children out and about. They are really persistent and will typically weave a sad story. Usually there's 2 of them in the stories that I've read. You might feel compelled to open the door or realize as your hand is on the handle that you've moved your hand there without knowing that you were doing it. Usually at that point, it's when you realize that their eyeballs are completely black. Not just their pupils, but their entire eyeball.
Oh, man.
So one of the first stories of them is in the middle of nowhere, Vermont, just a town in the middle of nowhere. An elderly couple heard the sound of 3 knocks on the door. They opened the door and saw 2 children, a boy and a girl. They said, "Parents will be here soon. Can we come in?" The children did not make eye contact and just stood there in the doorway. The elderly couple were hesitant, but after a while they let the boy and girl inside. The kids settled on the couch while the wife made some hot cocoa, and the husband asked them questions that went unanswered. The wife returned and noticed that her cat was scared and angry with the children. "May we please use the restroom?" The wife looked at the kids and she finally saw them. The children's eyes were as black as starless universe. She directed them to the bathroom and returned to her husband, who was covering his face with his hand. "Did you see their eyes?" The husband then showed her his hand full of blood from a nosebleed. The power suddenly went out, and the house turned as dark as the kids' eyes. The wife headed to the restroom and was confronted by the voice of the kids at the end of the hall, uttering, "Our parents are here." The kids then exited the house, leaving the door wide open. The wife noticed then that there were 2 men at the end of the driveway. The men were very tall and slender. The wife waved, but did not receive the same friendly gesture. The two men and children then drove away together in one car. The power came back on a little later after the kids had left. Throughout the week, weird things happened in the house. 3 out of 4 of their cats went missing, and the 4th found in a pool of its own blood.
Oh.
I know. Worst part of the story. Which is really horrible to say, considering the next sentence is, the husband continued to have nosebleeds and finally went to the doctor, where he was diagnosed with very aggressive skin cancer. So that was one of the first written stories of the Black-Eyed Kids. If you want to read more of them, they're all over Creepypasta. They're very, very creepy, as the title would suggest. And there's some really good ones out there. Some good stuff with them out there if you want to creep yourself out. Remember that.
If you don't want to sleep tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you want to wake up and think that they're standing in your room. So those are just very few of the more modern day folklore. In my opinion, they are folklore. Even something like Momo, who was very brief in pop culture. I just think that that's what folklore is. I know that saying that they don't have a lot of rich history or anything like that, but I think they're pretty interesting. I'm wrapped up with folklore, and I'm moving on next week to a completely different topic, whereas my last several weeks have been very creepy. I am moving on to rock your world with something entirely different. So hopefully you don't mind. So I'm feeling full of dopamine. How about yourself?
So much dopamine.
Love it. Love it.
I don't even... Oh, I do still have... I have butterflies to talk about next week.
Butterflies in your soul.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Leave me alone. I'm trying to wrap up a podcast. This is harder than it looks.
It is. Closing out is hard.
Closing is hard. We should just play the song Closing Time and end it.
Every time.
Closing
Like, in the middle of a sentence, just like, click,
Dink.
and the episode ends.
That's perfect.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Yes, we hope we brought you some more dopamine this week, and we will be back next week for week 7.
Bye.
Bye.